Wind is one of the most common things we talk about in our daily forecast. What the wind speed will be like and what direction it's coming from. It's something we deal with all the time here in Iowa and the Midwest, especially during the fall, winter, and spring months. But do you ever stop and ask yourself, maybe you do, maybe you don't, where the wind actually comes from? And even though sometimes that wind does calm down, there is always wind ongoing out there somewhere. It's actually, by definition, the movement of air caused by the uneven heating of Earth's surface. So think about the sun that heats the ground on Earth at different times of year. It heats the ground at different levels in different places, of course, at different periods of time. And that is what ultimately leads to different areas of pressure. You hear us talk about high and low pressure all the time. The most important thing to know is that wind flows from high pressure to low pressure. In fact, most fluids, most air goes from high to low. That's just what happens in nature. Areas of high pressure are basically areas of cool sinking air where we have the air pressing down towards Earth's surface or compressing close to the ground. On the other hand, areas of low pressure are warmer areas that are rapidly rising areas of air, and that comes from the surface and goes up into the atmosphere, and that creates sort of a cycle, a circulation where we have high pressure sinking down towards the ground and low pressure rising and going up towards the upper levels of the atmosphere. And that difference in pressure is what leads to that movement of air and creates the wind. So when meteorologists are working to create and craft wind forecasts, we look for isobars on our maps, different lines of pressure, to determine how strong or how light the wind will be. The closer these lines are together, like what you see here, the faster the wind will be because there's a greater gradient, a greater change in pressure. That means that areas of high and low pressure are likely closer together. The farther apart these isobars get, the lighter that wind is, and typically there's not as big of a change in pressure over a short distance, and so the wind is typically lighter there. We often see a pattern like that in the summer where it's lighter. On average, the wind speed in Des Moines is less than 10 miles per hour in any given day in July and August, but notice it goes up in the fall months, in the winter months, and especially in the spring when the wind averages between 12 and 13 miles per hour, both in March and April. Here's why that is. In the summer, the jet stream, which is the area that controls all of our weather patterns, it's a big area of wind way high up in the atmosphere, that lifts to the north during the summer, which means we have lighter winds aloft in our atmosphere. And that means we have less wind at the surface because it's simply not as much wind up high, so there's not as much wind down to the ground. The jet stream, though, during the winter retreats to the south, and that means we have stronger winds aloft because they're inside of that jet stream, and that brings that wind closer to the surface, which is why we tend to see windier weather, especially when we get the changing of the season. So it's a really important aspect of our forecast, and it always exists. Even if we see it calm down, sometimes we see it speed up, and whether or not we like to deal with the wind, it is always something we will battle here in Iowa and the Midwest. For more science behind the weather, you can always check out the Local 5 Weather Lab on YouTube or on weareiowa.com.